Welcome to Cardinals Cover 2 with Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki. Cardinals Cover 2 is brought to you by Arizona Cardinals Podcasts. Visit azcardinals.com/podcasts. From the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center, here's Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki.
So a quick story before we dive into this Friday edition of Cardinals Cover 2. Ran into Corey Cunningham walking into the facility earlier this morning, and a tip of the cap to Mr. Cunningham. He has done, according to DJ Humphries, with his rookie duties.
Oh, is that right?
That is true.
So that carries into the next season?
Apparently. But his final duty, Cunningham got the call last night while he was almost asleep to come over to DJ's house to rescue him and his son from a rattlesnake in the backyard.
Wow.
So what do you do if you're an offensive lineman? You call Big Country. He takes care of that stuff.
I'd be like,
I told Corey,
call somebody else.
Just call the fire department. That's what they recommend.
Yeah, leave it to the experts, and plus they probably have some kind of device where you don't have to mess with that. DJ, that's scary if he's got a son at home.
Can you imagine that? I mean, knock on wood here. You know, we've had a lot of animals in our backyard, but again, no snakes.
Well. The funny thing is, he called the right guy based on his Instagram. Like he was
big time hunter. Yes,
he was a hunter.
He was hunting with a boot on right after the season was over.
And yeah, he gave us a little too much information what he was doing out there in the woods.
His nickname is Big Country.
That's right, makes sense.
And it's Big Country's birthday today.
Oh, very
May
well
17th.
Done. Okay, happy birthday, Big Country.
He's a big boy, huh?
He is.
Upper body.
Yes,
because he was dealing with the foot injury, so he was able to lift weights. They're excited about him, but that's a nice little nugget that I was not aware of.
Yes, so no more rookie duties for Corey Cunningham.
Well, it makes sense. He was drafted last year at this time, so he's been here a full year.
I've heard, though, sometimes that I can't remember what player said, but sometimes it extends into the regular season by 2 or 3 games. I don't know. These veterans, they'll come up with anything to extend it just a little bit more.
Well, we see it maybe more during the lunch hour because some position groups have to buy lunch for the veterans, and usually when it comes to the rookies, they got to bring in donuts or maybe.
But this year's rookie class, they get off easy. There's 11 draft picks.
Yeah, and you got 3 new ones in the wide receiver room, so they're gonna have to take turns there. Yeah, but they normally have to do their due diligence, kind of. I wouldn't say hazing, but indoctrination.
Yes.
To making the roster, and but hey, that's part of the growing up and then getting a chance to play, and then when they get to second and third years, they can be that guy that says, hey, make sure you go get some donuts for us this morning.
Absolutely.
And coffee.
It all comes around.
Yeah.
Now, since we started Cards Cover 2 in training camp last year, that means you two are still rookies.
Yeah.
So we're going to go on a rotation. You can wash my car every other week. Jurecki takes this week. You'll take next week.
I just walked right into that one, didn't we?
Yeah, we didn't officially start. We did
till August,
and then when they broke camp, I started on July 9th, so my 1-year anniversary is coming up.
And that was a week later.
July 16th.
Yes,
that's correct. Wow. Time flies.
It's been a heck of a first season, by the way. First year.
A lot going on.
Absolutely. And speaking of which.
That's why I grabbed the 90-man roster this morning.
Let's take off on this Friday edition of Cards Cover 2, let you know what's ahead. We hear from Patrick Peterson in the wake of a 6-game suspension. How does the team move forward without Peterson for a third of the season? Kyle Odegard joins the show. Phase 3 of the offseason strength and conditioning program begins next week. We discuss what that means. And, of course, your questions via social media using the hashtag CardsCover2. Hashtag CardsCover2 using the number 2 to get involved in the show here on this Friday afternoon. That's all ahead. But first things first, the news of the day. And at 1:16 Thursday afternoon, the following statement was issued by the NFL. Patrick Peterson of the Arizona Cardinals has been suspended without pay for the first 6 games of the 2019 regular season for violating the NFL policy on performance-enhancing substances. So 6 games, MJ, a third of the season, and we'll go over those 6 games in a moment here. The good news for Peterson is he is eligible to participate in all offseason and preseason practices and games, but once we reach the regular season, he's gone until October 14th, which is the week of the game at the New York Giants.
Yeah, and if you look at the first 6 games, he only misses 1 division game, and we talk about, obviously take care of business at home, considering 3 out of their first 4 at home, only 1 division game, and then when he comes back, I want to say they're going to play the Niners. So he's probably going to be a coach and a player in training camp. I mean, they got to get some other guys ready, and he owned up to it. He apologized, and I'm sure it's going to be difficult for him, and we know that he's not going to be eligible for any postseason honors. You're not eligible for the Pro Bowl, and I'm sure that's the last thing on his mind, but he did make 8 in a row, and so that streak's going to come to an end. And, obviously it really affects the roster because there was so much talk about bringing in another corner, Robert Alford, and then they brought in Tremaine Brock, and then they get Byron Murphy early in the second round with the 33rd pick. So when you want to play this man-to-man press coverage, you got to have shutdown corners. And so competition is a good thing, but I do think he's going to have to be somewhat of a coach out there. And, it's going to be difficult for him watching this team for 6 consecutive weeks, but he put himself in this situation. It wasn't a mistake. He admitted that obviously, he was, he went through the process. He dropped his appeal. Initially it was reported it was 8 games, now it's down to 6. And normally you get 4 for PEDs, and obviously there was something else with whether the next test came in or masking. But he owned up to it, and I can appreciate that. But I'm glad we got this behind us, and now hopefully we can just focus on football.
Yeah, this will be the first games that Patrick Peterson has missed. He started 100, not only just played, but started 128 consecutive games. That streak is over, and as you, MJ, mentioned, he is not eligible for the Pro Bowl. He's been a Pro Bowler his entire career, 8 in a row since entering the NFL. The Cardinals released a statement as well on Thursday. It read in part, Patrick recognizes how disappointing this is for everyone in the organization as well as our fans. As we all do, he understands that regardless of intent, he is ultimately responsible for everything he puts in his body. Our coaching staff and our players are now aware that he will have to play the first 6 games without Patrick, and they understand they have to rise to the challenge that it presents. And the key phrase there is responsible for everything a player puts in their body. There are ways that you can ask questions, and whether that happened or not, no idea. Patrick has not been kind of forthcoming as far as exactly what happened, but there are ways to combat this, and whether that happened or not, but ultimately this is a player's responsibility.
Yeah, and you're all told whatever appears in your body, that's on you. And the thing is, though, when you go through that process, I mean, it's a situation where, I think, obviously, Patrick dealt with the diabetes a couple years ago. Maybe he felt fatigued, but for this, again, whatever you put in your body, and there is a 24-hour, 7 days a week, 365 days a year hotline where you can call, because sometimes the guys will wake up and they feel like they got the flu. Maybe they'll take a little thorough flu, or they'll take their wife's medicine just because they don't want to go to the store. Well, you got to read the back fine print, and you can call this line, and it's available, and they will tell you whether it's, maybe it's a recording or there's somebody live, that this is what you can and can't take. So obviously that didn't happen here, and that's the reason why we're having this conversation.
All of this broke on Thursday early in the afternoon. Later at Thursday night, Peterson at his charity event addressed the situation.
Just want to make a quick statement regarding the news that happened today. Definitely sorry what broke out today, but for the most part, I just want to. I think you guys understand my character and also understand my commitment on and off the field, and also to my teammates and also to the Arizona Cardinals organization. That's why this is apparently very, very hard for me, because obviously never been in a situation before and never wanted to have my name attached to anything like this. But I'm looking to move forward and put this behind me. I want to thank my family, my teammates, the coaching staff, the Arizona Cardinals community, and also organization. And I'm looking forward to getting back week 7. I'm going to continue to try to keep that smile on my face and get back to being the best DB in the league.
Again, this was at Peterson's
Just wanna make a
charity
quick
function last
statement,
night, the
regarding the news
fourth
that happened
annual
today.
celebrity golf tournament. It was a welcome party, and then
Definitely.
today they had the golf tournament, all in the benefit of the Patrick Peterson Foundation for Success, which is a great charity organization. Peterson does a number of things around the community, around the state, and again, this is huge. It's just the timing, as he said, was unfortunate, but he did make mention that he had known about this for a while now. Months was the word that he used. And whether or not he should have gotten ahead of this earlier, it's, again, unfortunate that this all breaks hours before he's supposed to host this charity event and, of course, this two-day event overall.
Yeah, usually the league works with the player. I don't know when the teams get notified, and I'm sure at some point he did try to appeal, and then he probably got more information. He decided to move on and take his punishment. It's an unfortunate situation, but you can't put yourself in that situation. I said he comes back for the Niners game. He actually would be eligible to return in Week 7, a road game against the New York Giants.
Yeah, I'll give Peterson credit. He stood and not only gave a statement, which was not prepared, but he also took questions as well. Not a lot, but enough out there in which he didn't sound like he was going to be a participant during OTAs. He cited parent responsibilities, but he did mention that he wanted to be in shape for mandatory minicamp. And, of course, mandatory means you must be there, otherwise you're going to get fined. So Peterson is planning on being here. It's just probably not the entire OTA, those 10 practices that begin on Monday. And then he asked about the relationship with the Cardinals because there's been a lot of speculation about that. And he said things are, quote, great. And he had spoken with General Manager Steve Keim, in fact, that day. So said all the right things. There are still some questions that at least I have, and I'm sure a lot of people do. He was given an opportunity to clarify the suspension. He chose not to. Typically a 4-game suspension. He received 6. So there's that. But again, he spoke about it, and now it's time, at least for everyone, okay, what happens now?
Yeah, I do anticipate he's going to be here for the mandatory minicamp. Now, it's not voluntary. You can get fined up to $80,000 every day it goes up. Usually it's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I exchanged text messages with Patrick yesterday and this morning, and he's really excited about the defense. He knows he's letting a lot of people down. Matter of fact, Steve Keim mentioned that right after they made the pick on Kyler Murray, the first Cardinal that texted him was Patrick Peterson. He's really excited about the quarterback position. So he knows that obviously this is not the ideal situation, but he's committed to playing here. He wants to be here, and hopefully when he gets back, he's back to Patrick Peterson because they're going to need him, and it's really important for this team to get off to a good start.
One other note concerning the relationship between Peterson and the Arizona Cardinals. Heard Paul Calvisi mention this morning on Doug and Wolf on flagship station 98.7 FM, Arizona Sports Station. Calvisi, sideline reporter for the Arizona Cardinals, emceed the event last night. Cliff Kingsbury in attendance, and according to Calvisi, saw Coach and Peterson speak for quite a long time, upwards of 30 minutes. So if the relationship is not, quote-unquote, great, I don't see why the head coach would all of a sudden show up to an event that he's not required to be at, show support for the player.
Yeah, and I think that was always the plan. Obviously, I think everyone was thinking, when I say the NFL normally, makes the announcement and the team will have a statement, they were thinking it was going to come out next week. But I think Cliff was already going to go to the event, and it's good that they had a conversation. But again, Patrick knows what happened here. He's just got to take his medicine, and I'm sure he's going to be motivated to come back. But I think it's a big loss for the Arizona Cardinals. You don't replace cover corners, and I guess it happened, and now you got to learn from it.
Oh, arguably, and maybe not even arguably, your best defensive player and arguably one of your best players overall on this Cardinals roster. All right, here are the 6 games in which Peterson will miss, and it begins with a Week 1 contest at home against the Detroit Lions on September 8th, and then it's on the road at Baltimore, back-to-back home games against the Panthers and Seahawks before going on the road again to play at Cincinnati, and then, of course, the game number 6 is against the Falcons, and those last 2 matchups here as we welcome in Kyle Odegard to the show here from azcardinals.com. He was at the charity event last night, and you look at these 6 games, Kyle, and not to slight those first 4 opponents, but of course, when you look at the Bengals and the Falcons, that's A.J. Green and Julio Jones, and especially the matchup against Jones, that's always been fun to watch between he and Peterson. But when you talk about losing a starter and a number 1 corner, not just on your team, but the entire NFL, these are 6 games that are going to be hard to kind of figure out what to do in the absence of 21.
Yeah, and those are the 2 that jump out to everybody, obviously. The Julio Jones matchups have been so fun. Seems like almost every year they're going head-to-head. And one thing we probably underrate Patrick is because he's been out there every single game of his career. Some games, teams barely even look at him. He doesn't get a lot of action, so we know how good he is, but he'll get lost in the shuffle sometimes because he's not always getting the ball thrown at him. Now I think it's just going to be so clear how much value he holds, and any shutdown corner does in this league, because Julio Jones can go off for like 200 yards receiving against teams, and even if he gets 90 against Patrick, people think that's an okay game, but between 90 and 150, 170, 200, that's a big difference.
I don't want to slide into the other receivers on the other teams, but just look at the returning receivers on the first 5 games. Kenny Golladay with the Lions, Willie Snead with Baltimore, John Brown no longer with the Ravens, DJ Moore, Panthers, Seahawks, Tyler Lockett, and, of course, they drafted DK Metcalf, and then, of course, the Bengals with A.J. Green and Julio Jones. So it's not awful. It could be a lot worse, but you're talking about now all of a sudden trying to figure out what to do with that other side of the field that Peterson did such a good job at manning and controlling, and basically saying you can't throw over this direction.
Well, Hollywood Brown went to the Ravens, so that's going to be a matchup. But yeah, I mean, Lamar Jackson's more of a guy that likes to run. You just got to keep him in the pocket. All right, so let's fast forward a little bit here. We know that Patrick's going to be out, and we know they drafted Byron Murphy in the 2nd round with the 33rd overall pick. I mean, on paper, you would think it's going to be Robert Alford, depending on how they play sides. David Amerson, I don't know if people are talking about him enough. Tremaine Brock does have experience. He's played for Vance Joseph. And then you throw in Byron Murphy. So there are some options, but obviously there's a drop-off.
Yeah, and my big question is with Byron Murphy, they've talked about how much they like him, and they were saying that he was their number 5 rated player in the entire draft. So obviously they have really high hopes for Byron Murphy. What I'm wondering is if you want him to play in the slot after Patrick gets back, being a rookie, should he just focus on the slot and learn that sort of thing?
Good point.
Or do you want him to go outside and then maybe move inside after 6 games?
Because that would be more his natural position when he did in college.
And it's a balance, though, because you're trying to learn almost 2 positions in a sense if he's going outside and in the slot. So a lot of that will be up to Vance Joseph, what he wants to do and what kind of style he wants. But it wouldn't shock me if you feel like we can make it work with Tremaine Brock or David Amerson on the outside if we want, because you don't want to just throw everything at Byron Murphy right away. It reminds me of Brandon Williams, where he was an outside cornerback, and in that first game against the Patriots in 2016, he blew an assignment and they got a touchdown. So I think you have to figure out mentally where Byron Murphy is and if he can handle trying to learn 2 different positions at the same time in camp.
Yeah, that's a great point. And sometimes, and I know usually you got a lot of veteran slot receivers, and we usually see veteran guys there. That's what I went out and got Tremaine Brock. But I think you can hide them a little bit more inside than on the outside.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wonder, like, how is this going to affect your entire defensive mentality where – with Patrick Peterson, you say, okay, you follow around Julio Jones or A.J. Green, and we can do other things with the other 10 guys. But without Patrick, do you have to play more zone? Does somebody travel with somebody? Are you just staying on your sides of the field now with your outside corners? So from a tactical standpoint, it's a lot different when you don't have a chess piece as good as Patrick Peterson.
Well, and we know last year the Cardinals played a 4-2-5 like 90% of the time, and there was 3 safeties and 2 corners. Here they've been maintained. They're going to play 3 corners. I wonder if a guy like DeAndre Thompson can get a role. Maybe play it a little bit. I know he's a safety. He's a hard hitter. He's not a starter. He's playing behind Swearinger and Budda Baker. So I'd be curious to see how they mix it up. But you want to get your best 11 on the field. And we know this team's going to play 3 corners this year opposite Patrick. And they're going to have to wait until week 7 for that to happen.
A couple of things as far as options now here, and I'll get both of your takes on this. The first is what Coach Joseph decides to do, because we know he wants to play press man. does that change? And you kind of alluded to that a little bit, Kyle, because now all of a sudden you're without a huge piece of that puzzle. Does that affect everything else that you want to do defensively? And the other option is, and it's another moving part, Budda Baker. Moving him back to the slot where he played last season. But then again, when Patrick comes back, and then you're moving him back to safety, and then it's the whole Byron Murphy thing. What do you do? Because you don't want to throw too much at these guys if you want them to just focus on one specific job.
And maybe you have a specific plan right now in the off season and you want to do this, but I think that's important is if it's not working and a certain player isn't working out, you have to be willing to evolve. And if that means Budda Baker going from free safety to slot cornerback again because that's your best lineup, you just do it. But yeah, I think they'd have to try to figure that out. And a hard part is in the offseason with the rules, you can't really do the press coverage and grab guys. So do you know how well these cornerbacks can do in that situation, especially rookies or young guys, or will that take until camp when you see how a Byron Murphy can handle press coverage on the outside compared to zone, which I believe he played more zone in college. So there's a lot of moving pieces. And like you mentioned with Thompson, maybe if Thompson excels, then Budda's in the slot. If Budda and DJ are your clear two best safeties, you do a corner in the slot. But as long as they're willing to be a little bit flexible, I think that's the best plan because you do have a lot of different options that you can try to work in.
And it could be week to week based on the opponents. Are they more of a running team? Because then you want to play your true 3-4 based on their weapons on the outside. Now, to me, if I'm Robert Alford, now clearly he came here knowing that he was going to get picked on. He's got to be licking his chops because whether he plays a side or when they break the huddle, he takes the number one wide receiver. He's going to get a lot more targets going his way, and I'm sure he's up for the challenge.
Well, and just think of what happened with him a year ago, and I think he has something to prove based off his performance and something that he freely admitted to, that he wasn't 100% healthy, maybe should not have been on the field, but felt he owed it to his teammates to actually play and get back to his performance level of 2016, 2017, and now all of a sudden, hey, I've been given a more important role, if you will, and now all of a sudden he is that veteran, if you will, in that room, and he just got here, which is kind of strange, but he is going to be your number one guy, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on him starting week 1 against the Lions.
Yeah, and the nice thing is that clearly in free agency, they thought a lot about him because they gave him a lucrative contract despite coming off a year that wasn't very good. And if you look back a couple of years when the Falcons were in the Super Bowl, he had a nice run there. I think it was Desmond Trufant who got hurt. He kind of took over that role and he excelled. So that would obviously be best case scenario if he turns into that top tier corner. He's not going to be Patrick Peterson, but if you can handle a Julio Jones and not let those guys run wild on you, because like you said, in the beginning of the season, it's not too bad. Lamar Jackson's not going to beat you too much with his arm. Russell Wilson can do both, but it's just making sure A.J. Green and Kenny Golladay and Julio Jones don't really have these monster games against you.
The plan right now as we speak can change. And the Cardinals do have options. Again, there is a significant drop-off when you lose a Patrick Peterson, but there are 9 other defensive backs on the roster. Tremaine Brock has the most experience, and, of course, last year with Vance Joseph and Marcus Robertson. And then you go to David Amerson with 74 games, Josh Shaw, 55 games, Brandon Williams, 45, though many of those were on special teams. And then there's Dietrich Nichols, Chris Jones, and then a couple of rookies with Byron Murphy and Nate Brooks. I mean, all those guys, if one doesn't work, then they'll go to the next guy and the next guy. But it might be something to pay attention to, whether it's here in OTAs or in training camp. If those options don't work out, what's on the free agent market? It's not a great market as far as corners. I think I was doing some research and saw the biggest names were Morris Claiborne, Orlando Scandrick. But do you move someone from a safety position to a corner and bring back a Trey Boston, for example? I mean, we're all looking for answers right now here, and it's May, and a decision doesn't have to be made until September. But the Cardinals do. My point is the Cardinals do have a number of options, both internally and externally.
Yeah, and sometimes, teams will bring in 2 players on the same day, just maybe, get a little leverage. They did bring in Maurice Claiborne, and he clearly is an outside guy. Now, he's had some injuries. I want to say he's played in 31 games the last 2 years with the Jets. He is strictly an outside guy, so it made sense for them to sign Tremaine Brock. But again, that would allow Murphy to play inside and have competition there. So I agree with you. And of course, the Cardinals do have the first waiver claim until week 4. Be interested to see when they get down to that 53, because I think we could see 4 or 5 moves, and maybe that's a position where they'll take a look at.
I like, though, Kyle's suggestion, at least for right now, you keep Murphy where he is because you don't want his head to be swimming any more than it already is going to be, and you find someone else opposite Alford.
I mean, and with that being said, I'll contradict myself a little bit, but if Byron Murphy can handle playing the outside and he's your clear best option, playing out there is such a premium spot where if you can get Robert Alford and whoever it is playing pretty good, you can maybe figure it out a little bit more in the slot because those guys are doing the shorter routes and aren't going to burn you as much down the field. So you put him wherever he's best. But going back to it, I just wonder if being a young guy, relatively inexperienced, where he played a lot of offense in high school and he's still learning a little bit, but you just got to figure out what's best for Byron Murphy, both short term and long term.
You know what can cure this problem? Pass rush.
Yes.
Stop the run and get to the quarterback. So now all of a sudden he's not just targeting his number 1 guy or number 2 guy or a rookie who's playing in the slot, probably against a veteran guy. So get a pass rush, kind of contain the run game, and then if you can put pressure on the quarterback, that will go a long way. Maybe they can force some turnovers.
Yeah, it's a question that we did not anticipate having to have. It was always who's going to line up opposite Patrick Peterson, and now, as Darren Urban wrote on azcardinals.com, I'll steal his line, it's okay, now who's playing for Patrick Peterson, something that I don't think anyone anticipated here in the 2019 offseason.
Well, Kyle mentioned it. I mean, they made a commitment to Robert Alford. I mean, him and Jordan Hicks, they got 3-year deals.
Yeah, we thought we had it figured out finally, the outside corners, and now it's in flux again.
You know, a lot of guys are on 1- and 2-year deals, and maybe they're prove-it deals like Suggs and Brooks Reed, and then you get Sweezy on a 2-year deal. But they made a commitment to Jordan Hicks, who's going to be the signal caller on defense, and they made a commitment to Robert Alford on both getting 3-year deals.
When you talk about Robert Alford, you remember back in the day when we had Marcus Robertson meet the media in there, he told me that when he saw him become available, he literally got out and ran to Vance Joseph's office, and he said, I see it. And they were like, okay, let's go get this guy. And then Alford joined us on Cards Cover 2, and he said he had other offers, but the Cardinals were so hot after him that he knew right away that he was coming here, which, it says a lot. He wasn't expected to be there, and they really, really jumped on it to go get him because they obviously see something in him.
Well, and, some of these guys want to be wined and dined. He didn't even wait for free agency, so he felt that comfortable. And, I like what he said when we had him in here. He said, I could have sat it out, but I wanted to play. I knew we needed he needed to be out there. So I like that attitude, and I'm looking forward to watching him because regardless, Patrick will be back at some point, week 7, so we'll start to see it. But curious to see who's going to make some plays in that secondary. I like the safeties. Now there's a question mark at corner, but it definitely affects the roster when you look at the defensive side.
All right, let's move off this topic because this is not the only thing we wanted to have Kyle in on this Friday afternoon. He's got a great feature piece on rookie wide receiver Hakeem Butler up on azcardinals.com. We had a chance to see him during his introductory press conference, but you kind of did a little bit of a deeper dive, if you will, on his backstory and someone who lost his mom at a very early age, got bounced around, but still very successful in college, not only on the field but in the classroom as well. Has got his degree, and now the Cardinals having him in that wide receivers room.
Yeah, when just talking to him, you can tell how mature of a guy he is. He was telling me he graduated college in 3.5 years. He's already looking forward to getting his master's and talking to me about the youth of today and trying to make a good impact. It's like, this guy's 22. He's practically a youth with them, and he's already thinking forward. And, yeah, the genesis of it is he grew up in Baltimore, and his mom got breast cancer when he was around 12 years old and passed away when he was 14. And he moved to Georgia for a little bit because he was basically her primary caretaker, and the extended family decided it was too much of an emotional burden on him. His grades were going down. He wasn't going to class as much. So they wanted to make sure he was okay. They obviously care a lot for his mom, but didn't want him to get swallowed up by the not going to school and then starting to go to the streets. So props to his family for doing that. And then when she passed away, he moved to Houston, the suburbs of Houston, and if you remember Andrew and Aaron Harrison, the basketball players, he's actually cousins with those guys. Moved in with that family. Their dad did his mom and dad, the Harrison's mom and dad, did a really selfless thing by bringing in Hakeem and his little brother Khalil and basically being their parents when they were ready to have an empty nest. And, you know, some parents are ready to go on vacations and not have to have the parenting issue, but they did a great job of bringing them in, growing them. And
that's great.
Hakeem just really took off from there. He was never a big prospect in high school, just kind of this athletic, long guy that we see, owned his craft, went to Iowa State, eventually figured it out, and now a very intriguing guy who still is raw, but you see the tools between the size and the speed, and if this guy puts it together, he's a really intriguing piece for this season.
He had a great line when you were talking about the Harrison twins, and for those that are not familiar, just look at Kentucky basketball because they were part of that success with John Calipari, and they were highly recruited out of high school, and Hakeem told you, like, you know, I didn't treat them any different. Like, you know, we're fought, you know, like treated like brothers, but they were treated like such a high level at high school, and you come home and Hakeem's like, yeah, whatever. And it didn't seem to bother him whatsoever. But to have the bounce from state to state, city to city, and then not really kind of have a place to call your own. And here he is, and he had a great personality, big time smile, and you could just tell how much he appreciated the opportunity. And he does give the Cardinals something that they don't have, and that is that tall receiver.
Receiver.
And someone who, I say, gains separation not only horizontally but vertically as well, because that's a part of it as well. It's just a matter of, okay, learn the playbook, and then if we can trust you to do what you're supposed to do on the field as far as route running, and then we've got something that, I'm not going to say replace Larry Fitzgerald, but play that position to kind of be someone that the Cardinals haven't had since, Michael Floyd maybe, as far as that tall receiver on the outside.
And he's so much taller than I can remember of any receiver being here. And that's a good thing when you're throwing him the ball, contested catches. He can go up and get that ball, especially with Kyler Murray's accuracy. If they can figure out that chemistry and do some back shoulder stuff or jump ball, that's a huge asset. For Hakeem, I think the one thing is when you're that tall, it's a lot harder to get into your breaks and run the intermediate routes because it takes longer to slow down. And a cornerback that's smaller can stop faster than he can and maybe jump those routes. So that's his big thing, I think, when it comes to progress, working on that intermediate route running ability. But between the contested catches and then we see a lot of highlights of him catching the ball, and then he's looking for action against these defensive backs where he's ready to push them off and keep on running. So he's such a physical guy. He really enjoys that. So that's a lot of maybe the quick screen type stuff where you get the ball in his hands and he's not a jitterbug like a Andy Isabella or a Christian Kirk, but he might just be able to overpower guys and get yards after the catch.
Yeah, and speaking of Hakeem Butler, the NFLPA is having their 40 rookies in California for their trading cards and obviously pictures, and they got 3 of the Cardinals there, Kyler Murray, Andy Isabella, and Hakeem Butler. Only one defensive player, Nick Bosa.
It's an offensive league, I guess.
Yeah, that just didn't make any sense when you pointed that out to me earlier. Quinnen Williams, the 3rd overall pick. He's not
Josh
there?
Allen,
Ed
Devin
Oliver.
White. Yeah, Ed Oliver. Well, it is trading cards, and so I'm sure that leads to fantasy. So it makes sense that 39 out of 40 are offensive players, and it's nice to see the Cardinals represented.
Absolutely. A quarterback and 2 wide receivers. Again, a great read on azcardinals.com. Kyle's feature on Hakeem Butler. I highly, highly recommend it. And on that note, we'll say thanks to Kyle for joining us here on this Friday edition of Cards Cover 2. And speaking of Hakeem Butler, let's flash back to when he was introduced by the Arizona Cardinals. He's got a great perspective on the fact that he lost his mom at such an early age.
I look at it from 2 different perspectives. One, initially, you just you have that why me mentality, and it's tough. It's tough as a kid, and just with the life I had and just everything I was going through in Baltimore, just for her to just leave, it was like I don't have a mom anymore. But I realized over time she's always with me. I carry her with me every day. And from the second perspective, as I got older, I look back. I lost her so she can give me a new life. And I carry that with me every day. Without her, I might not have moved to Houston and started playing football so competitively and got recruited and even be sitting here today. So, I thank her for everything every day.
What do you think she think of this right now?
Oh, I mean, she be excited. I mean, she be trying to sit up here next to me.
He's got such a great attitude, and the two perspective on losing your mom. I mean, that's devastating as a young man, because at the age of 12, 13, you're a young man, and all of a sudden you're the man of the house because it was a single mom who was raising 3 kids, and he was the middle kid, and all of a sudden now having to grow up exponentially because your mom is not in there, and then hear him to say thank you, Mom, because it gave him a brand new life, a brand new opportunity, a road to work, make his way down.
Yeah, that's called growing up quick.
Yeah,
that's what happened, and then the fact that another family was able to take him and his younger brother, and that's fantastic. That there's good people out there, and the fact that he was able to find a home, and even though he wasn't highly recruited, he was a guy that played well at Iowa State, and you look at his some of his highlights at Iowa State. I mean, this guy, he was averaging probably 14, 15 yards a catch. I don't know if you can do it this level, but the fact is 50-50 balls. Now, I do think he's got to improve on the route running, get enough press coverage, just like, as Kyle mentioned, his height could be a little bit of a disadvantage off the line of scrimmage. Once he gets running hip to hip down the sidelines, he should be fine. And then those 50-50 balls, I mean, he's a guy you can throw the out pass to, you can throw over the middle, and you can throw the deep ball. So he's definitely going to fit in this offense, and I know the Cardinals are excited to have all 3 of those receivers.
Well, he admitted during his press conference that some of those easy catches, if you will, he struggled with. That was the one knock on him coming into the draft, was the number of drops on the easy catches, and it was the contested catches, the acrobatic catches in traffic that he would make, and then you're wondering, like, well, 1, how did he make that catch? And then 2, well, if you can make that catch, how can you can't make the simple easy catch? And sometimes those are the most difficult, because you're kind of, instead of focusing on the ball coming to you, it's the surrounding. What do I do after the catch, or am I going to get hit? Whereas if you're already kind of in that area of another defender, you can just focus strictly on the ball. So that's something that he's going to have to work on. But we talk about not only the guys in that room, but a Jerry Sullivan, a David Rye, Larry Fitzgerald, guys that not only Butler can, but this entire wide receivers room, as far as those young rookies, can learn.
Yeah, I think it comes down to 2 things, concentration and then focus. And again, you could see it's not as natural catching the ball for him. He's probably looking for it, but you don't want to body catch it. You want to catch it with your hands and then bring it into your body, and that's where you can possibly break some tackles. So the focus and concentration will come from him knowing what he's supposed to do, and we all talk about once you can figure out the playbook, and I'm sure it's complex, but they're going to play fast, so instead of thinking, you can react a lot faster, and I think that's something we're going to have to watch unfold as we get into the season. It may not happen right away, but over the course of the year, you'll see improvement.
Absolutely. This is a Friday edition of Cards Cover 2 as we come to you from the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center and broadcasting as we always do in our Bose QC35s. Go to Bose.com for more information. And a reminder, if you ever miss a show, you can download via a number of different platforms via a podcast. Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play Music, TuneIn, and SoundCloud. And don't forget, all of your favorite podcasts can be found at azcardinals.com/podcast. All right, this week marked the first full week with the veterans and rookies together, both on the field and off the field in the meeting rooms. Here's what head coach Cliff Kingsbury had to say about, well, that very topic on the Kingsbury Chronicle podcast.
It's exciting. We'll finish up this week of phase 2 and then get into OTAs and see some more competition and offense versus defense. And I think that's when you'll kind of see, how those guys respond, how the young guys respond to elite level of talent.
And, of course, this coming week, starting on Monday, phase 3, which means organized team activities. Now, the difference between phase 3 and phase 2 is, yes, you can finally have offense versus defense. Again, no live contact, but now you can kind of measure up, if you will, where this offense is, where this defense is, with a brand new head coach and a new defensive coordinator with, I won't say a new defensive scheme, but reintroducing, if you will, that 3-4.
Yeah, when Bruce Arians was here, when they had a 90-man roster, he would have basically 45 guys on one field, which would be third and fourth string, and then he would have first and second string on another field. Now, some of these practices this week, you only had offense out there and defense. He learned that from Paul Bear Bryant. He's still doing that in Tampa now. So curious to see, anytime you bring in a new staff, it's a little bit different than the previous staff. So the main thing is they're still installing, and the fact that these guys got a chance to work with the veterans for the entire week, I think it's going to go a long way. And I think the one guy that's going to benefit from it is a guy like Kyler Murray. Now, some of these other guys, you wish Patrick Peterson was here to help, Byron Murphy, but there's other veteran guys there. So the fact that they got a week to kind of get their feet wet and they're still installing, so it's going to be a work in progress, but at least that you're making some progress and you can go back and watch the film and say, I need to do this versus this. Because one thing, when the coaches go back to the room and they watch the film, mental errors. You got to cut down mental errors. You can't afford mental errors. You can't afford them on Sunday. If you physically get a beat at the point of attack, they get paid too. You can accept that even though you want to get better. But mental errors will hurt this football team like it hurt any other team in the league.
Well, and even worse than just the mental errors is the repeating of the same mental error. If you're going to have it, that's fine. Then the next day, make sure you don't repeat what you had just done or been corrected to do.
Right.
That will frustrate coaches to no end. We've only seen this coaching staff on the field for one day, and that was day one of rookie minicamp, and it was a brief period of time. But what we did notice, and we talked about it then, was just how active this coaching staff is, specifically the head coach, Cliff Kingsbury, with the quarterbacks and acting as if he was rushing the quarterbacks. He could be a little bit more, but hands up in the air and rushing the quarterback. David Rye with the wide receivers. Chris Akoff getting in the middle of those defensive linemen, especially on the blocking sleds. And that is something that we'll be interested to see moving forward, because it's the position coaches, and I'll even throw Kingsbury in that group because he's going to work a lot with the quarterbacks. But those position coaches are going to have their hands on literally sometimes with these players.
Yeah, and Cliff, if he ever had a business card besides being the head coach, it would say head coach, play caller. I think he's the offensive coordinator, and he's a quarterback's coach. Now, Tom Clements, in respect to him, he has those titles. And, when they made the hire, I thought this is going to be good for whoever the quarterback is, whether it was Rosen or Murray. You're only going to have two, guys speaking to you throughout the course of the week. Of course, Cliff, and when he comes to the sidelines, Murray will obviously have a chance to talk to both, to look at some of the plays on the tablet. But he's only going to have two voices in his ear, and I think that's important. Where last year, you had Jason Michael, who was helping Mike McCoy with the game plan. Then it became Byron Leftwich, and he leaned on Kirby Wilson. It's just too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. So here, I'm comfortable. Kingsbury will tell you, hey, listen, I'm still learning what it's like to be an NFL coach. I'm going to go where I'm effective and where my expertise is, and that's play calling and working with the quarterbacks.
Well, and I think where he's needed the most right now. That might change over time, whether that's this season, next season, or the season after that. But right now, because you've got a rookie quarterback coming into a brand new league, if you will, you want to make sure that guy, he's the most important person on that field. You want to make sure that he is well aware of what is needed to be done.
Yeah, and he's obviously going to have to make the decision of when to go for it on fourth down, when you challenge things. And I think Cam Turner is going to be in the eye in the sky, likely will be in the press box helping him out. So they got a plan, and curious to see how many coaches are in the press box. You definitely want to have your offensive line coach down there. You want to look those guys in the eyes, look at the tablet, and then you have other coaches up there. They're going to help you with other stuff. Maybe they see a play. Obviously, being in the press box, you have a different view than waiting for the tablet or some of the video or some of the still pictures come out. So they obviously feel comfortable with Vance Joseph kind of being the head coach of the defense. They're comfortable with Jeff Rogers kind of run the special teams. And then Sean Kugler will have a big say along with Clements on offense. And then you throw in some of the position coaches like James Saxon and David Rye. So I like the staff. That's one thing I didn't look at last year was the lack of experience. They've definitely done their homework here.
On the topic of coaches being active in practice, that is by design, according to Kingsbury.
We want our staff to be hands-on and be high energy and have great enthusiasm, and we preach that to the players and expect it to be reciprocated. And so I'm really excited about the staff we have and the way they've handled themselves so far.
How does that approach make the players better from your perspective?
Yeah, I think they just know we're going to be consistent as coaches, and each and every day we're going to bring it, and that expectation is on their end as well. And I think when they see what we're putting into it and what we're about, they're going to want to be a part of this.
Every other Tuesday, the Kingsbury Chronicle podcast on 3 p.m., or I should say at 3 p.m. on Facebook with co-hosts Paul Calvisi and Lisa Matthews. And, of course, here on Cards Cover 2, Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, we broadcast from the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center, and doing so in our Bose QC35. Go to Bose.com for more information. With that, ready to hear what the Bird Gang has to say?
I am ready.
Your questions via social media. The Bird Gang sounding off on this Friday using the hashtag CardsCover2. Hashtag CardsCover2. Let's begin with Instagram. User at Ollie_Foe wants to know, with the loss of P2 for 6 games, which DBs are expected to step up in his absence?
Well, I would start off with Robert Alford. You throw in Byron Murphy, Cardinals second-round pick, David Amerson, Dietrich Nichols. Brandon Williams still takes reps at corner in practice, but he's really started to excel on special teams, one of their better special teams player, gunner, and we don't know if they'll add a guy between now and the start of the season.
Yeah, we discussed this a little bit earlier in the show. There are a lot of internal options, but of course, if that doesn't work out, then there's external options, whether that's via the waiver or free agents who are looking for work.
And you mentioned 9 currently on the roster.
Plus Patrick, that would be 10.
And the Cardinals will get an exempt there, so they'll have 53 guys. He'll go on the league suspension list, so it won't affect the 53-man roster going into the season.
Another question via Instagram. User at Klaus Jurgen wants to know, who do you think will be the defensive captain or captains for the Cardinals this year?
Well, I think Chandler Jones. I think Corey Peters. Usually you try to get one guy from each position, and maybe DJ Swearinger's earned that right. I know he had some issues with Greg Minuski, but he's going to be one of those, energy guys, dog guys. He's going to want to hit. So you usually have one from every position. So if I had to guess, Corey Peters, Chandler Jones, maybe T. Sizzle just because of his experience, and then I would think Swearinger.
Yeah, captains voted on by the players just ahead of Week 1. Staying with your questions here via Instagram, user at Colton Hughes wants to know, how many receivers do you see making the 53-man roster?
Well, I've been maintaining, I think, 7. And
by the way, David Rye wants to see 8.
8.
He's told that to Paul and Lisa on the Coaches Chronicle
Well, good
podcast.
luck with that. That means you're only going to have 2 tight ends. I can appreciate it. He thinks that 8 guys can be on the roster, which is quite the contrary. I think 7, maybe 5 are active on game day. I'll go through the list, just what I educated guess. Fitz, Kirk, Isabella, Butler, Johnson, Kevin White, and I still think Trent Sherfield has a chance.
And, of course, being able to play special teams,
It's
if you're
huge.
that 6th or 7th wide receiver, is big.
And Jalen Tolliver got picked up recently by the Titans.
Yes.
He was also a guy that was on the practice squad last year and then eventually came on the active roster.
One more question from Instagram user at _Mill 2 times wants to know, how is Kyler Murray different from Josh Rosen as a player?
Skill set wise, stronger arm, much more of a dual quarterback. To me, he fits Kingsbury's offense. And I'm not saying Rosen wouldn't have been able to pick it up. It would have been a period of time. But I just think all-around skill set, just a better athlete.
Mobility,
and just the fact that he has a stronger arm. Maybe Josh is willing to throw in more in tight windows, but I think the Cardinals got it right, and they made the right decision going with Kyler Murray.
All right, last question. It's from Twitter as we continue to sound off here on this Friday. User at MBS365. Which position group should show the greatest improvement over last season, whether due to new coaches or new recruits?
Well, let's hope offensive line.
Just alone by being healthy.
Well, just going with veteran guys. They got to stay healthy, and then the 3 subs would be Shipley, Corey Cunningham, and Max Garcia. So they're not going to start any rookies. And I would say wide receiver. I mean, they definitely have made an investment at that position, bringing in Jerry Sullivan as assistant coach through the offseason and training camp. They drafted 3 guys. They brought in Kevin White. You still got Kirk and Fitz. So I would say this is important because this team was they were not very good offensively last year, protecting the quarterback, not being able to run the football. So I would say offensive line, wide receiver, and then bringing in Charles Clay and Max Williams, and we'll see about Ricky Seals-Jones. And the running back position, I think it's more about David Johnson and Chase Evans.
Yeah, but offensive line, huge for this team here in 2019. Appreciate the Bird Gang sounding off here on this Friday using the hashtag CardsCover2. Hashtag CardsCover2, your questions via social media. We do it every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here from the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center. Before we sign off here on this Friday and get everyone set for the weekend, how about we end the show with a little bit of a smile? some good news
Perfect.
to end the week. And congratulations to David Johnson and his wife, Megan. They have welcomed in a brand new baby girl, London Elizabeth Johnson, into the world earlier this week. In fact, on Tuesday, the couple's second child, and Johnson posting the picture on Instagram earlier. I guess it was late yesterday, but looks like the entire family is doing very well. So congratulations to the Johnsons.
And she's going to have a baby brother. He's going to be the older one. He's going to be able to protect her. A lot of smiles in that picture.
Absolutely. So a good way to wrap up this edition here and this week on Cards Cover 2. Appreciate everyone's involvement behind the scenes. Special thanks to Tim Delaney, Jim Alejandro, Grayson Choi, Jackson Sipes, my partner Mike Jurecki. I'm Craig Grialou. Have yourselves a wonderful weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday. Start of Phase 3 of the off-season strength and conditioning program. We'll talk all about it on Monday. Until then, have yourselves a wonderful weekend. This has been Cards Cover 2.